Welcome to the Work, Wealth, and Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Nicole, and this podcast is your guide to start creating a lifestyle by design. From entrepreneurship, money and finance, taxes and residencies, and everything in between, this show highlights the nuances of a true global citizen lifestyle. Let's dive in. Our first Digital Nomad Digest episode for 2024 with myself and Cami. So, today's episode, we are going to be chatting about freedom. I think it's a very fitting topic for 2024, starting off the year right. We're going to be chatting about what freedom looks like for both of us in our unique lifestyles. So, Cami, why don't you start us off? We just had on her podcast recording a little bit of a conversation about freedom, what that looks like, and some differentiation factors as well between the lifestyle she lives, I live, and other nomads could potentially live as well.
The first time ever that I thought about this concept of how freedom can mean different things for different people was the first year that I was living as a digital nomad, which was 2021. And I remember that for me at that time, so like 3 years ago, 2 years and a half ago, or whatever, it meant not having a base, not having like a my name on a rental contract anywhere, not having a job that required my physical presence. For me, freedom at that time meant that I could go, like, I had no strings attached with anything, like, not even a relationship. I was very much on, like, I don't want anything to hold me. I don't want any cages. I just want the maximum amount of freedom that I can. I don't want a like in real person job, and I want to be able to leave this country or this city whenever I want. And I feel like eventually I ended up creating this, and I had this lifestyle that I could just like pick up my stuff and go around and move and everything. And no one existed in my life to the point, like, no one was in my life to tell me what to do or not to do. I didn't have a physical job, so I was building, my stuff online so I could do that from wherever in the world. I remember that I could, I don't know, check in a hotel on a Monday and check out on a Thursday while everyone else in the world had to check in just for the weekend, just because I had this freedom of not having to pay a rent. And also, I was, yeah, just having the freedom of where I could work anywhere in the world. After a certain point in my digital nomad journey or my global citizen journey, this is the label that we've been discussing as well. How do we call ourselves? After a while, I started feeling quite constricted by that, which is really weird because I went to the extreme of having the most amount of freedom that a human being, I think, maybe that is playing in the material world still can have. And that started making me feel very constricted. I feel like the lack of a base started to really get to me because I felt so unstable that it started hinging my freedom. That's what I felt. I felt like the lack of having a base, the lack of stability started to impede my growth on my business, on myself, on my relationships. I didn't have the opportunity to create a community because I was always moving around. The people that I met, they were constantly in like this digital nomad hub. So I met them, I became really good friends with them, and then they would leave. And then I was like having to make friends all over again. So it was never like relationships that were long lasting. They were really intense and really great, but they were not long lasting. And at some point, I felt like I always had the only thing that I could think of during the week was where am I going to stay? Where am I going to live? Like what cities? And I think that the freedom of being able to be literally anywhere in the world started to make me like, I remember one day before going to Crete, I was like, I'm going to Crete. And then I was like, no, I'm going to Paris. No, I'm going to the south of France. No, I'm going to Montenegro. Like I was having so many options that at some point I couldn't even decide. And it just froze me to death. I was just like, I can't make a decision. And which is like a great problem to have, like it's a very privileged kind of problem to have. The ability to choose. But yeah, at some point, I just felt like I wasn't free anymore. I was encaged in my own freedom, quote unquote, like in my own illusion of that's what freedom means for me. And yeah, it wasn't until 2023, so last year, that I felt like, okay, I really need to ground. And for me, what freedom will look like now is to have a base and to have like kind of a routine in which I'm doing my groceries in the same place. I'm integrated within the city, so I don't feel like I'm like this outsider inside of the city. And also, right now in Paris, for example, I take French classes every 2 day, like 2 days in the week. So I feel like I get the metro, I have a place to go, I have people there, so feel integrated with the city. I feel like I'm part of the city. I feel like I'm part of something. I have my friend that lives here. I'm starting to make new friends, like build, like networking with people who are also content creators here in Paris and everything. And I feel like for me right now, this is what freedom looks like. And it's very, very, very different from what it looked like in 2021. And I feel like if I had put my 2021 version into the life that I'm living now, she wouldn't be that happy. I can tell that for sure. But yeah, what about you?
I feel like freedom, like you said, it really looks different for every single person. And it's the same, I think it's the same with a lot of quote unquote digital nomads when they start the journey, because like we were talking about previously, you start the journey and all you want is to be able to travel and the freedom to work online. And I think a lot of people, most people start that way. But then you have that and it's like, oh, okay, like I have it, cool. And it's not really as like fulfilling. It is for a short term, but in the long term, it's not so much. Like you need other aspects to really ground you and to, whether it be the community, the people you're surrounding yourself with, like the work that you're doing, the business that you're building that you love. Like you need a good mix of other aspects, not just like, woohoo, I'm traveling and it's fun. And I think that's kind of like the initial stage for a lot of people who start their nomadic journey. And then from there, they realize like, okay, so there needs to be like more to this lifestyle. And so then that's when what does freedom mean to you come in. And it's like, does freedom, like for you, you are living in Paris full time and like you have an apartment contract. And like for you, that's freedom because you're in a country and a city that you have chosen that you want to be. It's not just like by default where you want to live. For me, it looks like having the ability to be 1 month here in Paraguay and then be in Mexico for maybe 2 months or maybe 6 months, like, I don't know, and then at any point, we can fly wherever we want, like, really having that ability to be wherever we want, and not just for travel purposes, but also, like, to be wherever is best for business as well, like, that's freedom to me, but to some people I tell some people what my lifestyle looks like, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, that's so chaotic, like, how do you get any work done?" And I'm like, "Well, like, my life is really business, like, everything I do revolves around business, even, like, meeting people and connect, so it's not this, like, big thing where I have to be online, like, every second of the day. Sometimes I'm definitely online, like, more than I need to be, but, like, for me, that's a freedom lifestyle that I have built up, and it looks different for everybody, but I think when you're starting this journey, you don't really realize that. You have to go along in the path of being a nomad or whatever for some time until you realize like, "Oh, there used to be more to what is it? Like this kind of like holistic picture."
Yeah, I feel like when I first started traveling, like let's say 2019, when I left Brazil to live in Bali for 4 months. And I remember that my dream, like this was back in 2019. So what you saw from digital nomads was like the picturesque, like laptop on a beach in Thailand or in Indonesia type of thing. And I remember that was everything that I wanted. And I remember that I got to that place. I was in Thailand or in Bali, like building my little like yoga website on the beach, and I could just be anywhere. But at the same time, there were so many things that I still felt like they were missing, like the purpose of the work in the sense, like the ability to rely on a business that was already working, because at the time it was like the beginning of it had like two clients, or like whatever. It wasn't bringing any consistent income, and I was constantly afraid of that like instability and the lack of, I was like really alone a lot of the time, and the lack of having the human connection with people and things like that. And I was working for my, like I've been working for myself since 2019, 2020. So it's not like I have a huge team of people and I'm like connecting to everyone on Google Meets or whatever, like every single week. It's very much you have your clients, you know what you do, and then you're just doing your own stuff by yourself. And it can be very lonely. And I think that this is something like those elements, like you said, of the community and stuff like that, that you start realizing once you start getting into this journey. And although you can be a good hermit and you like spending time alone, it gets to you at a certain point. And I'm not saying that like community is the most important thing. Of course, I think that's like there are several pillars of creating a life that you love. And I think that freedom is the ability to choose how you build each one of those pillars, the freedom to choose if you're working for yourself, and what is the type of working that the work that you're doing, and what is the type of value that you're providing to future possible clients and things like that. And then if you decide to live somewhere or where you want to live, and it's the freedom of you choosing that. But I think it's also really, really, really important, and I want to reiterate that, is that a certain point I feel like everyone will feel kept by their choices, because if you choose A, you will not get B. And for me right now, I feel like I'm starting to experience this a little bit, because it's been 6 months that I'm here almost, and I can already feel like this urge to kind of escape or move or do something different. And I think it's really important to understand what is the part that is authentic of wanting to move again, or the part that is like, I'm bored, I just want to play with a different toy, and it's like a different city. And this is the endless cycle that I'll keep myself in. So right now, I'm really checking in with myself and being like, okay, you committed to yourself to being here for at least 1 year and trying this out. Like, you have 6 more months to go. And then if you want, you can leave. But at the same time, like, where is this coming from, and blah, blah, blah. And also the realization that yes, this was a choice that I made of staying here. And I'm really happy because I am starting to get the things that I was wanting to get, like the groundiness and blah, 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 and the sense of community that I'm building and stuff like that. But at the same time, it comes with another set of circumstances, which is like, okay, like you're here now. You can't just like pack up your stuff and leave to Cape Town. Like I could, but would that be helpful? So it's like you're making a choice. You kind of have to really commit to that choice, because you made it from a place of freedom, but it doesn't mean it's not going to change at some point. So it's important to keep checking in with yourself to understand what freedom means for you at every single step of this journey, or whatever journey you're in.
Yeah, I can completely resonate with that, and I feel like it's the duality of, like, having the best of both worlds, but you kind of have to figure out, like, which best world you want, because for us, we have the same problem, not problem, but we've experienced the same thing in the opposite way, where it's like we travel a lot and, like, we don't have a home base, and we do a lot of, like, hotels and Airbnbs, and so then we got to a point, like, just a few months ago where it wasn't exciting anymore because, like, we're always doing this, and we've been doing this for, like, years and years, and then before that, I was, like, in China and traveling, and it was just, like, it got to a point where we weren't excited to be in these Airbnbs all the time and to be in a new city, and it's like, if you're in a new city, you should be more excited. We were excited, but, like, you should be, like, so excited, and to us, it was just kind of like an every month thing, and so we really had to take a look at that and be like, okay, what does the next step look like? Because not what we're doing now. And not that what we were doing then was wrong, but it was like, it doesn't work now. It might work again in the future for a longer period of time or a short period of time. Like, I don't know what that will look like, but we had the freedom to say, like, this is not working. So, yeah, like you said, let's go somewhere for a little bit of a longer term and see how that works. And figure out what our travel style going forward or the next step is going to be. And things can always change, but having the freedom means like, yeah, you're tied down to somewhere for a little bit of time. Like we'll be in Mexico for, I don't know, like maybe a few months minimum, probably. And then it's like, okay, we've kind of committed to that for minimum a few months. You have the freedom, but then you don't have the freedom during those few months, but you had the freedom to make that decision. It's very interesting. That's definitely something I think when I went into this lifestyle, I was just like, "It's gonna be amazing, and I'm gonna travel all the time, and I'm gonna love it, and it's gonna be so much fun." And it's like, it gets to a point where just like anything, like, you can't eat the same food every day for a month and be like, "Oh my gosh, it's my favorite food." Like, I still love it. Things have to grow and change and evolve.
Exactly. And I think that you can only learn that through the contrast of having the things for like a certain amount of time and everything. And I remember like we have talked about this. One of the things that I started feeling really constricted by when I was in Crete was, or like traveling around, was like not having, I don't know, like a juicer where I could do like my celery juice and in the morning so I could cleanse from parasites, like something like that. Or like buying furniture. Not that I want to buy furniture because I haven't bought any furniture and I don't even have a juice cleanse. Like I don't even have a juicer in my house here. But what I mean is like if you're moving around all the time, there are a lot of things that you can't necessarily have or they're not necessarily a priority, but at the same time they are still impacting your life in a way that you wouldn't prefer it to impact your life. Like you could buy a juicer every country that you're in, but are you really going to buy a juicer every country that you're in? Or like, are you really going to travel with a juicer? Like, if it's really a priority, you're going to do that. But is it really, a priority to buy a juicer in every country? So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like there is like small things like this that when you have a house and when you have a base and when you're like integrated in the physical world, you don't really think of because you buy a juicer, it's gonna be there with you for 1 or 2 years, and if you move from your apartment to another, you're probably gonna take it in a like, of course, like you're just moving apartments in the same city or I don't know the same country. If you're just moving around every month, it's not something that you really think is a priority. So yeah, I totally get you. But I think that it's important to experience all of the spectrum, like the spectrums of this, because otherwise if someone just listens to this podcast and be like, okay, Cami and Nicole, they both told me that it's not a good thing, like that they both stopped traveling a lot, so I'm not gonna travel a lot. Like maybe you won't feel free if you do that. You really have to make this decision for yourself. So that's why I think it's so important for people to use this podcast and as an inspiration to check in with themselves as to what freedom means for you in this moment right now, and then check in again in 6 months or whatever amount of time when it starts feeling not exciting, because I think that that is a good indicator of there's something off in this the way that I'm living.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like my vision of myself and my life and like what I'm doing is very different now from what it was when I first started this lifestyle and then different again from when I first left my home country. So you always kind of have to be like, what does updated version look like? But yeah, I think that this is a really good resource for people who not even who are getting started, but who are already like in it themselves. And it's like just to know that things will change, like, what you're doing now is not probably not what you're gonna be doing in 1 or 2 years from now, which is, like, pretty short term in my opinion. It's not like that's the rest of your life, but yeah, I think that this serves as a really good resource. So thank you for being here, for sharing that, Cami. And there are so many more good episodes to come in 2024. All of our links are below if you do want to connect with myself, with Cami. Cami is on YouTube now doing vlogs of Paris life and what that looks like for her as a digital nomad, global citizen living outside of her home country. So all of our links are below if you want to check us out or message us, any of those things. And thank you for joining us here in today's episode. You've just listened to the Work, Wealth, and Travel podcast. If anything from this episode resonated with you, I would appreciate if you share this podcast on your socials. And of course, be sure to tag me. And don't forget to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for joining me on this global citizen journey, and I'll see you in the next episode.